So it is another great pleasure of mine to introduce our next speaker. She's one of my best friends, and she's one of the most dedicated people to wolves in Colorado that I know. And her name is Rosie Sanchez. She's the field coordinator of the Rocky Mountains and Great Plains program at Defenders of Wildlife. With her role, Rosie is providing her support, passion, and dedication to inclusivity to Defenders of Wildlife's efforts to restore wolves to the Southern Rocky Mountain state of Colorado. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Rosie.
Thanks, cutie. Thank you so much to speak for wolves for having me. I greatly appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here. My name is Rosie Sanchez, she, her, aya pronouns, and I'd like to acknowledge that in Colorado, I work on the traditional territory of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations who have been here from time immemorial. Also, I'd like to say hello to some of the participants that are here. I recognize a lot of your names, and I'm super excited. I'm super excited to see y'all here. So with that, I'm going to share my screen really quick and get this going. Steph, will you let me know if you can see my screen? Are we good? Yes?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I will be going over wolf reintroduction in Colorado, restoring Colorado's natural balance. So wolf history in Colorado. So pre-colonization, up to 2 million wolves roamed North America, right? And then in 1943, the last wolf in Colorado was killed, so 75 plus years ago. Since then, there's been a dedicated group of people who have been asking Colorado DOW, which is now Colorado Parks and Wildlife, to implement a wolf reintroduction restoration plan. 4 times, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has had the opportunity to come up with a plan, and they have declined. So this dedicated group of people took that into their own hands and came up with a ballot initiative, originally called Measure 107. This ballot initiative, if we got enough signatures, would put wolf restoration in the hands of Colorado voters to see whether or not they want wolves back in Colorado. And so our timeline down here in 2020, it is now Proposition 114. It is accepted for the 2020 election. So Proposition 114, what is it? Proposition 114 is the reintroduction and management, which I think is really important, that gets overlooked a lot of the time, of gray wolves in Colorado. So Prop 114 would reintroduce wolves to Colorado on designated lands west of the Continental Divide by December 2023. So I don't know how familiar all of y'all are with Colorado, but we're split with the Rockies, and west of the Rockies is what we call the West Slope. And on the West Slope, west of the Continental Divide, there's about 17 million acres of public lands that is great habitat for wolves. And that's where CPW would be releasing the wolves. Once again, requires the CPW Commission to implement a recovery plan following statewide hearings and using scientific data. And would also require the creation of a compensation fund to fairly compensate owners for losses of livestock caused by gray wolves. So there's already a compensation measure written into the proposition. So how did we get here? So once again, seeing in the participants list, I see some of the coalition members from Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund here. And we got here through the involvement of the Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund and project to get the first ballot initiative in history for the reintroduction of a species to their historic range. And I cannot stress this enough, that volunteers and signature gatherers were instrumental in making this happen. If any of you out there watching this presentation were part of that effort, thank you, thank you, thank you. It could not have been done without you. They gathered 210,000 signatures, 139,333 of those which were valid, to get wolf restoration and management on the November 2020 Colorado ballot. So thank you to all who were involved. It was a gargantuan feat and we're still not done. So why Colorado? Colorado is the missing link in wolf recovery from Canada to Mexico. Ideal wolf habitat is abundant in western Colorado, 17 million acres of public land. And with the largest elk herd in the US, Colorado has excellent prey base for wolves. Genetic exchange, and there's also the potential genetic exchange between northern gray wolf, and Mexican gray wolf is historically natural and presents a potential for genetic rescue in the Mexican gray wolf population. So if you can see in this little map, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but that's just blank territory. That's a missing link. And we have the opportunity to restore this highway. And that's what we want to do, the connectivity. And this picture right down here, we'll get to this later in the presentation, is Wolf 1084M that came from the Teton Valley area. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. And with that, I just want to show you a little video about the Defenders team, which is part of the Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund. And the day that we took all of the ballots that we worked so hard at collecting to the Secretary of State's office. And I'm just going to play this and let me know if you can't see it.
Good morning, this is Jonathan Proctor.
Can you hear it?
I'm the Rockies and Program Director for Defenders of Wildlife here in Denver, Colorado. Today is a very exciting day. Today, Defenders and several other environmental groups are working together under the Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund to deliver 211,000 signatures from Coloradans all over the state to the Secretary of State to place the question of wolf reintroduction on the 2020 ballot. This is the first time that any state has gone straight to the voters to make a decision on whether or not to reintroduce wolves to their state. Colorado is also the last state in the Rocky Mountains that has yet to reintroduce wolves to our state. So because of decades of inaction from our federal and state leaders on reintroducing wolves to Colorado, we're going straight to the voters to make the decision. And in 2020, we have great hopes that this will pass at the ballot box.
Good morning, Defenders. This is John down here in Colorado. For the past 6 months, with your support, we've been working hard to gather enough signatures to put the question about wolf reintroductions to the voters here in Colorado. I've got the van with me here. We're heading off right now to the storage facility to pick up those packets and get them delivered to the Secretary of State. Step 1, pick up your coworkers. Okay.
Hi!
Let's go get some packets.
Let's roll.
This effort, over 6 months, hundreds of volunteers supporting us, many different coalitions coming together to make this happen. We're just really excited to be a part of this effort and get everything delivered. Get wolves back in Colorado. This is the first step, so thank you for doing your part. Now we just got to do ours.
So this is our last batch of boxes, and we're going to load them up in the truck and get them over to the Secretary of State's office. Today was a historic day for wolf restoration in Colorado.
We submitted over 210,000 signatures to the Secretary of State's office for wolf reintroduction in Colorado.
We are so grateful for the dedication and support of all of our volunteers to help make today a reality.
Stay tuned next year to see how you can help support wolf reintroduction in Colorado.
You can learn more at wolfactionfund.com.
Great. Can you all still hear me? I'm hoping so because I see the microphone on my computer.
Yep.
Okay, great. So once again, I want to give credit where credit's due, and Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund Coalition. These are a couple of the members, NRDC, Great Old Broadsford Wilderness, Colorado Wolf and Wildlife Center, Center for CBD, Defenders Endangered Species Coalition, Living with Wolves, Wildland Network, and Sierra Club. There's also a whole host of other contributors to the coalition as well. And these are a couple of them too. And I just want to, make it very abundantly clear that this was a whole group effort that the Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund is an umbrella over. So key messaging. So how do we talk about wolf restoration in Colorado? Well, healthy landscapes and healthy wildlife are values all Coloradans share. Our number one source of revenue in Colorado is the outdoor recreation industry, and all Coloradans share the quality of life that they want, healthy landscapes. People want to go out and hike their 14ers, and they want to see beautiful wildflowers and crested butte. During wildflower season, they want the healthy landscape. Coloradans, scientists agree, and scientists agree that Colorado's natural balance has been impacted by the loss of wolves, harming wildlife, habitat, and even water quality. We owe it to future generations to restore Colorado's natural balance by bringing wolves back through a responsible, science-based plan that addresses the interests of all Colorado stakeholders. And a lot of the time in the news, you'll see the opposition trying to put people in categories. Like the rural community doesn't want to see this. They don't want wolves in their backyard, or, ranchers don't want wolves back. But if you look at this demographic provided to me by Haley Hawkins of the Endangered Species Coalition, who's also a part of the Rocky Mountain Wolf Action Fund, you can see that 84% of Coloradans across the board, all through the state, support wolf reintroduction initiatives, as well as 82.4% of hunters and 83% of ranchers as well. All across the board, you'll see that Coloradans want wolves back to Colorado. It's part of our Western heritage and legacy. So with that, there has been a couple of recent wolf sightings in Colorado, which is really exciting. Once again, the presence of 1084M in the summer of 2019 was spotted in North Park, Colorado, so northwest Colorado. And he was radio collared, so his signal was picked up just a couple of weeks ago, so he's still in that area. And in 2020, just a couple of, I think it was just a month after we got word that we were going to be on, that Proposition 114 was going to be on the ballot, CPW confirmed a pack of 6 wolves near Moffat County, which is really exciting. And in this slide, you'll see just recent wolf presence in Colorado from 2004 all the way down to 2020. So on the left side, you'll see lone wolf 1084M, that wolf that I was talking about from Teton County. And this video that I'm about to show is just some footage that led to Colorado Parks and Wildlife biologists to get out there and look for these wolves. So barely a snippet of anything, but they were found, and it's really exciting that they survived through Wyoming. Now, reintroduction versus recolonization. We're hearing a lot of, if wolves make it down here on their own, then it's fine with me. Just let them do it on their own. They can recolonize on their own. But that is almost nearly impossible to do. Because, from the screen, wolves are hunted without restriction throughout the predatory animal management area, representing 85% of Wyoming. So wolf 1084M had to travel, if you can see the arrow from Wyoming down to the southern Rockies, Colorado, had to travel through the Red Desert, or what we like to call the Death Gauntlet, to get to Colorado. So the fact that 1084 made it down to Colorado without being shot and killed is somewhat of a miracle, as well as this wolf pack, the Moffat County wolf pack, because all the odds were against them, because it's just open territory, and there's no restrictions in Wyoming. It's very much you can shoot on site. So recolonization is harder, and there's a lot more to recolonization than just being able to come down here. And the wolf pack, the Moffat County wolf pack, is wonderful, and we're super excited about that, but 6 wolves a genetically diverse population does not make. And from CPW's findings, 3 of those wolves were siblings. So reintroduction is still on the table because of genetic diversity. So popular myths and the opposition, which we'll get into. So impact to elk. We have to talk about this in terms of Colorado, because Colorado has the largest elk population of any state in the United States. But if we look at the data from the Greater Yellowstone ecosystem from before wolves were reintroduced in 1995, you'll see that elk populations in Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana were significantly lower than the 2018 populations from after wolves were reintroduced into that ecosystem. And all of these numbers came from animal wolf reports from Idaho Fish and Game, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks, and Wyoming Game and Fish departments. So elk are above management goals in 17 out of 22 zones in Idaho. Populations are 29% over objective in Wyoming, and populations are 50% over objective in Montana. So the argument that if we reintroduce wolves to Colorado, they would decimate the elk population is just not, it's just not a factual argument. It's just not, there's just no evidence to support that whatsoever. And as we know, wolves improve the health of prey. Hunters are selective, and hunters the average age of elk cows killed by hunters is 6 years old, and the average age of elk cows killed by wolves is 13. So it's a completely demographic that wolves and hunters are going after, that aren't crossing. And we know that wolves go after the sick and the old because it's energetically taxing to go after those big elk, the big bulls. So that's just what we know about wolves. So impact to elk, take with that what you will. So with wolves, we have to talk about depredation, and we can't necessarily just ignore the fact that, ranchers have been on this landscape as well. And when we say, we have to look at all stakeholder agreements, all stakeholders, in order to be successful and to have a sustainable population of gray wolves, we have to look at everything. So cattle on public lands, if we're looking at the Northern Rocky Mountain gray wolf population area in 2015, all of the green on the left side of the screen you'll see is counties where cows are, and then the black dots are wolf packs. So total wolf population in 2015 was 1,904, and the total cattle in counties with wolves was 1,602,100. Confirmed wolf depredations in that area were 148. So a loss to wolves a loss of cattle by wolves accounts for 0.01%. So, and these numbers are coming from the USDA National Agriculture Statistics Service. So it's a reputable source. So I want to be sensitive to ranchers and farmers, but there have been ranchers and farmers that have come up with solutions to coexist with predators on the landscape. Tom Miner Basin, for example, they're not only working with wolves, but they're working with grizzly as well. And by changing a couple of stewardship practices, they're coexisting with wolves and grizzlies on their landscape while also turning a profit. So it is possible, and education outreach is the way to get everyone on board. Once again, non-lethal tools and techniques to reduce conflict in these areas for cattle ranchers and farmers: herd instincts, range riding, fladry, livestock guardian dogs, and much more can contribute to the protection of cattle and investments. And I will do one more video. Let me know if you can't hear it.
Wolves are a symbol of the West. The wild species that we have in America are an American right, and we have a responsibility to save them. We have a responsibility to bring them back to their natural home and their natural territory. As someone who leads an outdoor recreation company who derives our livelihood and our economic structure on the habitat and the wild places that we have here in Colorado, for example, or across the West, it's a responsibility. Restoring the balance of an ecosystem is just critically important.
Restoring wolves in Colorado is a basic value of Colorado heritage. I mean, wolves have always been here. They were here long before humans were here. So we're bringing back something that's always been here. It's natural to this ecosystem. I'm John Longhill. I'm a rancher, a landscape architect, and been involved in ranching and the agricultural industry for over 40 years. And wilderness is the preservation of the world. And wolves represent wilderness, the wildness of nature.
Habitat comes to life with wolves. Elk become scattered and less grouped in numbers, which creates chronic wasting disease, creates all sorts of different problems. Beavers come back, native plant species come back. The biological balance of wolves is undisputed scientifically. 27 years ago, we purchased Otter Creek Ranch, which is a 453-acre piece of property which is under conservation easement with the American Farmland Trust. So the development is off of this ground in perpetuity. But the greatest gift of all was raising my two daughters here and having them grow up with this beauty of this landscape, the water that comes through here. It's like a little preserve. And the perfect habitat for wolves is in the backyard of the same place.
This is the right time for wolf restoration because of what Colorado has that no other state has, which is 17 million acres of wilderness areas, public land areas that's not habited by humans. So this is an opportunity for Colorado because of what we have, because of the natural resources that exist here that exist nowhere else in the country. Well, this ranch is an example of a sustainable ecosystem, a sustainable environment that's been, when taken care of, it gives back to us in a sustainable way. Bringing the wolves back to Colorado is about taking care of Colorado. It's about taking care of the environment, taking care of the ecosystem, bringing back into balance. They can't do it on their own. And by restoring wolves to Colorado in a managed way, a conscious way, we can do it in a way that's intelligent, that's going to benefit the wolves and people.
We owe it to our future generations. Restoring wolves, bringing back the howl to Colorado. We all win.
The gray wolf needs our help.
Join our pack and help restore the missing howl. Add your name at wolfactionfund.com.
All right. So there's obviously a lot to cover with wolf restoration to Colorado, but I did want to leave ample time for questions, preguntas.